I'm Leonard Briggs, and this is my podcast From My Head to Your Ears, and today I'm going to salute the 1980s. Now, the 1980s were the decade where I started out in my teens at 13, and I ended up at, how old was I in 1989? Let me think, 23? Yeah, I was 23. So anyway, a lot is said about the 1980s, a lot of nostalgia around the 1980s. But I actually lived through it, and I thought I'd talk about it. Talk about the movies, the music, my life, everything about the 1980s. I just thought it would be a fun thing on a winter day. So I'm going to take a break, and I'll be right back. I'm Leonard Briggs, and this is my podcast From My Head to Your Ears. I'm Leonard Briggs, and this is my podcast From My Head to Your Ears, and today I'm saluting the 1980s. I was 13 years old, freshly 13 years old, starting my teens in January of 1980, and I was not really a typical 13-year-old. I was kind of a big science fiction fan, and I was really just starting to get into music, and particularly Olivia Newton-John, who was probably the one of, if not the hottest female singer in the United States, if not the planet, in 1980. She'd just come off her success in Grease, and I was just starting to get into her music and having a crush on her and everything else. But that and Star Trek, I was a big Star Trek fan, of course, and Star Trek the Motion Picture had just been released at the end of 1979, so it was still in the theaters, and I got to see it again with my friends, Craig and Terry. So I was all about Star Trek and Olivia Newton-John, which continued through the 1980s, because, well, Olivia kind of stopped in the mid-80s and had her baby girl and didn't record much, but Star Trek continued to thrive in the theaters through the decade. So I was really excited during that decade, and that was my main two things that I loved in the 1980s. Of course, let's see, what grade? I think I was in, 1980, I was in the 7th grade, and puberty was setting in, and the awkwardness of your wonder years there, you know. I was getting tall and lanky, and my face was starting to break out, and my hair was unruly, and I had glasses, and I was just a hot mess, really. Add to that being a science fiction geek and terrible at sports. I looked like a prepubescent Napoleon Dynamite at that point, with my reddish curly hair and my glasses. So I was quite the sight, and oh gosh, was I so socially awkward. It was a mess. But I wouldn't change anything about how I grew up, because it made me the person I am today. It made me strong. It made me by not being one of the cool kids, how can I put this? It's hard to explain. It kind of gave me an edge, and I like the edge. I do like that about myself. I've never been one to follow trends or follow it, like try to be trendy or, you know, stuff like that. I've always marched to the beat of my own drummer. And I do love that. I do love that about myself. I always, I tend to, like, when I like something, I tend to go find out everything I can about it. And, I will drive people nuts with the details. That goes for anything with me. I mean, even if it's a new friend that I really, I'm excited about a new friendship, I'll talk about that friend for all the time. So it's just the way I am. I know that it can be annoying sometimes because I tend to just drive everybody crazy with details. And not everybody's excited about what I'm talking about as I am. So I tend to, people kind of sick of hearing me talk about things that I like Olivia Newton-John, like Star Trek. And I think I drove my parents nuts with that. But 1980, like I said, I think it was in the 7th grade. And everybody was just hitting puberty, and it was just an interesting time for me. And my sister got pregnant with my nephew Daniel in 1980. Late 1980, in the fall, I believe. And she had moved back in with us. Her marriage didn't work out, and it was kind of exciting to be around my sister when she was having my nephew, because I watched him kick in her belly, and we went through all the motions with her, and we were all excited about her baby. And we didn't know the gender back then. So she had a name picked out if it was a girl and a boy, which Daniel was the boy, and she was going to name her daughter Casey, which I remember that really well. And I was so sure it was going to be a girl. I had made a little plaque with Casey on it. I can't remember what I did. It seemed like I took a marker and then I carved it out, and it looked pretty cool. And I was all set for little Casey to be born. But we got a Daniel, and that's just fine, because Daniel's a great guy who's now pushing 45, which blows my mind. But I loved the year 1980. That's one of my favorite years. It's funny how you remember the good stuff and you don't remember the bad stuff, because my sister had broken up with her husband in 1980, and he was someone, and by the way, I still adore my ex-brother-in-law. He was our friend. He was the preacher's son at our church, and we grew up with him, and it was kind of heartbreaking when their marriage broke up, because it felt like we all broke up with him. And over the years, time heals all wounds, and we're good with him now, and I'm glad he's back in our life. He's a good friend, and I'm glad he's there, and he's my nephew's father, and my sister's married to a great and very nice man now, and that I helped fix her up with, by the way. And but I don't know. 1980 I guess it's just because I was 13 and my whole life was ahead of me, and I just look back fondly. My sister, actually, while she lived with us, she got her car, a 1962 Ford Falcon, and it was cool to have her drive because we could go to the movies, and she'd take us places, and we had a good time. And I enjoyed having her home, even though she was kind of heartbroken. And I remember we saw, my cat keeps jumping on my stomach right now, so sorry. They like to pester me when I'm recording my podcast. Someday I'll have a studio where I can do my podcast, but not today. It's my Kira, she's doing that. No, we saw a lot of movies, and I'm trying to remember, because some we saw with my dad. We saw Flash Gordon with Sam Jones. We saw Xanadu, of course, with Olivia Newton-John, which I loved Xanadu. It was a big bomb, but I really enjoyed it immensely. And anyway, that was just me. And we saw a movie called Resurrection with Ellen Burstyn. And they recently released that on Blu-ray, and I got to watch it again. And it holds up pretty good. It's a nice little story about a woman who's in a car wreck, and she dies with she dies with her husband, but she comes back, and when she comes back, her husband's gone, but she's crippled, and she ends up moving back to her family farm with her father, who isn't one of her biggest fans. And while she's there, her grandmother, of course, is glad to have her there. But while she's there, she discovers she can heal people. And she ends up healing herself, and she ends up being a locally famous healer. And anyway, I'm not going to give the plot of the movie away, but Ellen Burstyn, I believe, was nominated for an Academy Award, as was Eva Gallione, if I'm saying her name correctly, for that movie. It was, and if you ever seek it out and you're bored and you want to watch a old 80s movie, that's not one of the more famous ones, but I actually enjoy watching it. And Ellen Burstyn's always a great actress to watch. Of course, 1980 also was the year of the movie The Fog, which is one of my all-time favorites and one of my staple movies in my Halloween Film Festival. So I have to watch that every time, every year. It's kind of one I have to watch during the month of October. And it still remains one of my all-time favorite movies, the original Fog with Jamie Lee Curtis. And so, yeah, I really, really, really liked the 1980 in particular was one of my favorite years. 1981, not so much. I was 15. It's a year for me, that's the year I really started liking Top 40 radio. Betty Davis Eyes, was my favorite, song that year. Believe it or not, over Physical. I love Physical by Olivia Newton-John, but Betty Davis Eyes was, to me, my favorite song that year. And I really started liking Hall & Oates and Billy Joel, and my ex-brother-in-law introduced me to Blondie, and I love Blondie, but they were like having a great year that year with Call Me and The Tide is High, and Rapture was coming, and just all these really great songs of the early 80s. And I got the Physical album for Christmas that year. I got the Xanadu album for Christmas of 1980, and then I got the Physical album. My sister Lori bought me the Physical album for Christmas in 1981, and I played the grooves off that record. It's still one I go back to. I still really like it. Of course, Olivia Newton-John is my Elvis, so sorry I'm talking about her a lot, but she was a big part of my 80s experience. But 82 brought the excitement of a new Star Trek film, and 82 was also the year of many of my favorite movies. E.T. the Extraterrestrial came out, Poltergeist came out, of course Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan came out. I was so excited about Star Trek II because Star Trek the Motion Picture, although it was a success, it also was kind of critically panned by the critics. It was deemed too boring, and there was a chance there would never be another Star Trek film. So I was so excited that they made another one, and as it turned out, it was a smash, of course, and a great movie, and a lot of people's favorite Star Trek movie. I think it might be my favorite Star Trek movie as well, but I think I like The Voyage Home, the one with the dolphins. More on that later. My 80s experience was very antisocial. I pretty much would go to school and come home and stay home. I didn't go uptown. I didn't hang out with friends. It was just not my, golden years of socializing. That would come later when I started working at my job. But I was very backward and awkward, like I said, through most of the early 1980s. And so I don't know. I was just not I was awkward looking, and I was awkward. I had pimples, and like I said, I had the curly hair, and just, and I got sun sensor glasses that turned dark, but sometimes they would stay dark, and people thought I was on drugs. And my sophomore picture is the absolute worst picture I ever took in all of my school days. I was telling a coworker this story about how I was really into Benny Hill in 1982, as were my friends. And Benny Hill is a British comedian who had a TV show, and I love that show, and I love Benny Hill's facial expressions. And I remember the day that we're taking pictures, I remember going in and being the first one to sit down to get their picture taken. I was socializing with the photographer, who was a lady, and I guess I was kind of in my awkward way, trying to be charming, and she just like, I'm talking to her, and snap! I had made a Benny Hill. I had said something that I thought was funny. I made the Benny Hill face, and snap! She took my picture. So I'm in my sophomore picture. I'm making this Benny Hill expression. It's forever immortalized in my sophomore picture. And oh my God, that was just physically the worst year ever for me, because that was the year of the absolute year of my peak of having acne, and the hair was just out of control, and it just was horrible. This also was, I believe at that time, my friend Craig was moving, and which really was a bummer for me, because it was always me, Craig, and Terry, and then Rick Walker and the other guys that we hung out with. And our circle was, I don't want to say Craig was our leader, but he kind of was the glue of that group, I thought, at that time. And he was moving to McLeansboro, and we'd made a epic motion picture in my backyard, which I talked about with Craig in one of my past podcasts. And that was such a fun memory for me, that when I really look back on fondly. But I would love to see that movie again, because he would show that at when he was in McLeansboro, and everybody thought I was wearing a wig. So, anyway, and like I said, this is way before Napoleon Dynamite was even a thing. There was also a show called Freaks and Geeks, which just to me was a page out of my childhood. From the beginning, even the credit scene of Freaks and Geeks, when they were getting their class pictures taken, reminded me of the story I was telling you. And they were playing Joe Jett. Bad Reputation was a theme song. Don't give a damn about my bad reputation. You know that song. But school pictures got to be kind of a nightmare. When I was in grade school, I was kind of cute, you know. I didn't really get awkward till my 8th grade year, and I wasn't as awkward as I was going to get. But God, in high school, it just got awful. I still remember the high school experience. Oh God, it was so horrible in the early years. So we go to Christopher grade school, and then when we get to high school, the Bulkytown kids had their own school. Well, they didn't have a high school, so when we go to high school, we all join together. What do you call that? Consolidate. And the Bulkytown guys, although some of them had gone to Christopher school and moved, so I knew them, you know, when they were littler. God, I hate when I say you know. Anyway, I digress. Again, I do that a lot, don't I? The Bulkytown kids, I still remember this one big guy, and at that time he was bigger than me, and his name was Mike. And he looked at me, and I had PE with the Bulkytown. I think I was the only Christopher kid in my PE class, which was horrible because they picked on me so bad. But he's like, he looks at me and he's this big guy with chew in his mouth, and he towered over me at this time. And he's like, we don't like Christopher boys. And I'm like, oh, great. So our freshman year, it got to the point of my freshman class being so picked on by the upperclassmen that our principal, JW, got on the intercom and said, I really am not happy with the treatment of the freshmen by the seniors. So it was pretty horrible. And they would make, now I did, in my freshman year, excuse me, my freshman year, we didn't, I didn't have to push a penny, which is when you get down on your knees and they would make you push a penny on the floor with your nose. But that happened to me my sophomore year, and it was the guy I was just talking about. Because I don't know why he just kind of took to me and want to bully me, but he did. But as time went on, I got through my awkwardness, and by my junior year, I found the joys of Ivory soap and Clearasil, and I got my face cleared up because, oh God, I had such bad acne when I was a sophomore. It was just terrible. My face still breaks out to this day. And my hair looks a lot better because I found someone to cut it, but I still have bad hair days to this day. My dad and my mom had such perfect hair, and I don't know what happened to me because I got this curly mess of hair, and then as I got older, it thinned out, and it tends to grow out, and I look like Larry Fine from the Three Stooges. So, I actually found two great ladies that cut my hair, June Stilley and Jordan Flatt in the town of Christopher, who make me look very human, and God love them. But back then I could have used a good style. I ended up having a mullet though as I got a little older, because mullets got so popular, and I'm not proud of that fact, but they are back, and I don't know why. But my junior year, I still had my glasses, but I did get my face cleared up, and I did learn how to comb my hair where it wasn't so unruly. It was a process. And then there's my junior picture, which is slightly better than my sophomore picture, but I look like the beginnings of a Pippi Longstocking thing. I can't even explain it. And God, I was so skinny, and I was getting taller, and I just was so skinny, and I ended up being 6'2", and which is funny because I got taller than the guy that picked on me. Or my junior year, I was taller than him. He was a senior. I was a junior. And, he kind of picked on me a lot less at this point. And, I started to enjoy high school my junior year. I kind of, like I said, I got my face cleared up. I was feeling more comfortable. We weren't being picked on. Obviously, we were juniors. A lot of the guys that picked on me had graduated, and I kind of was enjoying my time at high school. And then I'd come home and listen to the radio. CIL FM in Carbondale was my favorite station. I loved top 40 music, and music was my solace my teen years. And I was thinking about mixtapes, and I would, when you had to wait on your favorite song and tape it. Now, at that point, though, I had an allowance, and I wasn't buying a lot of albums other than Olivia Newton-John. I had Blondie. I didn't really stray from that. I had the Star Trek soundtracks, of course, but most of my music experience was listening to the radio. And at that time, gosh, songs that stick out in my mind at that time, oh gosh, Kim Wilde's Kids in America, anything Hall and Oates, Private Eyes, and I Can't Go for That, No Can Do. And Rick Springfield I really kind of idolized Rick Springfield. I thought he was so cool with Jesse's Girl and all those songs. And there was just so many great 80s songs. 80s music was so happy, and it was great music for kids to cruise town with, and great music to do your homework by. And the movies were exciting, and that's when movies were loading their soundtracks with hit records or songs by hit artists, I should say. And soundtracks were a big thing, and they were a big source of top 40 radio. And of course, they released Thriller by Michael Jackson, which initially I was kind of irritated at. Funny thing, E.T. I was mentioning was one of my favorite movies. Now, at the time, I refused to see it because it was so overhyped. I mean, you could not escape without hearing about E.T., the extraterrestrial. It was so annoying. And, of course, I was all excited about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. But all they wanted to talk about was E.T. Also, I'm kind of jumping all over the place here because I'm just kind of freestyling it here. Grease 2 came out. And, of course, Grease 2 didn't star Olivia Newton-John or John Travolta. It was Maxwell Caulfield and a very young Michelle Pfeiffer. And they kind of had the characters reversed. Maxwell Caulfield's character was more like Olivia Newton-John. In fact, he was supposed to be Sandy Olsen's cousin. And Stephanie Zazzoni, I can't remember, Zazzoni? What was her name? She was a tough girl. And so it was kind of a reversed thing. And I saw it. I don't know that I saw it in the theaters. I don't think I did, but I did buy the soundtrack, and I liked it. And I finally saw it on cable, I think, just like the original movie. And I liked it. I didn't like it as much as Grease, the original, but it was okay. But it flopped miserably. So now it's got a cult following, and there's some people who think it's better than Grease, which is bull crap. But that's okay. It's just according to taste, and if that's your thing, good for you. But I'm sorry, Grease is a classic, and it made me the Olivia Newton-John fan that I am to this day. But the 80s was peppered with so many good movies. Oh my gosh. Raiders of the Lost Ark and Ghostbusters movies and Back to the Future, and oh my gosh, it goes on and on and on and on. So, I mean, to me, a lot of classics came from the 1980s. Oh, the Terminator movies were amazing. All the slasher films, the Friday the 13th and the Halloweens continued. I never really cared for the Halloween stuff other than the original, which was the best, and Halloween 2 was, yeah, it was good. But I wasn't into these sequels where they made these characters kind of ongoing and unkillable. Of course, there was also Freddy Krueger, and that's an awesome movie series as far as horror films. It just was so much fun to go to the movies in the 80s. You couldn't beat it, even more so than the 1970s. I think the theater experience of the 1980s was unbeatable. They had nothing but entertainment movies. They had blockbusters. Jaws started the whole summer blockbuster thing back in 1975. By the 1980s, it was just ridiculous. It was just one great movie after another. And celebrities they were fun. They weren't too political. And like, you'd watch the Grammys and it was about the music. It wasn't about their politics. And it was such a great time to grow up. And we didn't have the internet, so you had to wait on everything. We barely, I think VCRs started to get more popular, but in the early 80s especially, you had to watch like the Grammys. You had to watch it when it was on, or you were just out of luck. And I don't know. And shopping malls were so much fun. Our shopping mall in Carbondale, Illinois had a full-blown area where you could go to. They had a Long John Silver's and a McDonald's and pizza, and you could eat there and you could spend the whole day. Christmas time was amazing. It was just such a fun time, and I look back at it so fondly, even though it wasn't the best years of my life. And I'm glad. I don't know that the best years of my life have happened yet, I'll be honest with you. This certainly wasn't. This right now doesn't seem to be the best years of my life, but I am approaching my 60s now, so I don't know how that's going to happen. I am going to take a break because I'm about to cough, and I'll be back with more of the 1980s. I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast from my head to your ears. I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast from my head to your ears, and I'm talking about the 1980s. I'm actually kind of saluting the 1980s. It was a great decade to be alive. I was young, had my whole life ahead of me. Music was wonderful. Movies were great. Social life, but, I really can look back and if I'm talking about how great the 80s was, I'm talking about entertainment wise. I'm not talking about my personal life, because my personal life was just really nothing. It was just nowheresville for me. I didn't really start shining until the 1990s. And when I got my job at where I work now, I'm still there. Made all my friends, and I made the life that I have now. Then it started. And, but the 80s was just kind of an extension of my childhood, I think. I did a lot of daydreaming. I really, 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 really wanted to go to college to be a news anchor or, work in the television industry. I wanted to be a weatherman, or I wanted to be a DJ. I've mentioned that before, where I used to make tapes of me playing radio when I was sick at home. I had in the early 80s. I still was very much a kid in the early, my 13. I was probably 13 when I was doing that. There are tapes. I used to have tapes of my me playing radio. My nephews found them one time. I think I was discussing that on a past podcast. If I didn't, I'll just mention again. I came home one time and I walked home from work, and I used to have my own house, and my nephews were living with me, and I could hear my 13-year-old voice that before it changed blasting from my house. They had put it on my stereo, and they were rolling in the floor laughing because I sounded like Michael Jackson on helium at that point. And something I cringe about, after I got out of high school, I made my own audition tape and I sent it to a local radio station. Not a big radio station, but one of the local stations that I probably would have had a good chance of getting hired on if I knew somebody. So I made this god-awful tape and mailed it to the radio station in West Frankfort, WFRX. And I hope they threw that in the dang thing in the garbage can. I hope they didn't listen to it. Oh, I cringe when I think about that. That is such a cringeworthy. I had so many cringeworthy moments in in the 1980s, especially my high school years. I was talking about getting picked on, but another good one, when I took driver's ed, my teacher, was Max McDonald, who's a great guy, and his wife was my 8th grade teacher, who's a great gal. I love the McDonalds. And, Max, I get in the car and I don't know, I had been driving since I was 13, but my social awkwardness and my anxiety, I sound like one of today's kids, don't I? But I had all that at that age, and I was so nervous, and he intimidated me for some reason. I don't know why, because he was really laid back, but he intimidated me, and I get in the car, and I go right in the ditch. And oh my God, I was so humiliated. And the girl in the backseat, Julia Hill, who I'm still friends with, and she still laughs about this to this day, was rolling in the backseat. And I'm just like, and Max is just, it wasn't the first time, I'm sure, that happened, but I put the driver's ed car in the ditch. And then years and years and years later at my store, he used to come in and have coffee, and he remembered me somewhat, remembered the name, remembered my sisters, but he's like, yeah, I can't remember. And all these years that I thought, oh my gosh, he, he probably thinks of me as the worst driver ever. He couldn't remember that incident. So it kind of made me feel better, but I'm so glad. I'll never forget it. I know Julia will never forget it. But I found out years later that I was not the worst driver, which makes me feel better, but I don't know. I never forget anything, and that's a blessing and a curse, because I still, on those sleepless nights, I think my very first podcast, I talked about how my mind works when I'm trying to sleep. And I start thinking about all these things, and I still cringe to this day. And I am not the same person I was back then. My cats are fighting. I really do need I need a place to podcast. But back to the 1980s. I was talking about social, awkwardness, and oh my, you guys stop. I don't know if you guys can hear this. It's kind of funny, but I don't know. I still feel socially awkward. But I just don't let it bother me anymore. That's the good thing about being almost 60 years old. I'm getting to be an old man, and I've got the kind of, what the hell, nobody remember this anyway. I haven't got a lot of life left at 58. What am I, 58? So why bother with worrying about things? Everybody, and I found out over the years that everybody's done stupid things they're embarrassed about. We're all human beings, but that magical period of your teen years, oh gosh. But the thing I remember back to high school days, my senior year, I got contact lenses. I got my hair fixed good, got my face cleared up, and I was really skinny still, but I was kind of cute. So honestly, I didn't think I was, but I look back at those pictures and I thought I wasn't so bad. And I remember the coolest moment in my life was I had a girl I talked to, and her boyfriend was jealous of me. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And I also remember the guy that picked on me in the earlier story told me that I looked almost human. And that was the highest compliment I could ever get from him. And by the way, that guy, over the years, especially in my store years, we all grew up, and he was a great guy. And it's kind of funny how he was kind of my emotional support whenever I used to, have a bad night at work. And he'd always say, Leonard, it's going to be all right. But ironically, and this is sad, I don't mean this to be funny, but ironically, he got killed in a car wreck. And sadly, but I did have, it's not funny, but I did have an inappropriate chuckle at the fact that he would always tell me that it was going to be all right, and he got killed in a car wreck. So that's not funny at all, but it just, is that irony? I don't know. But, sorry, that was one of my little side stories there. Not about the 1980s. That's terrible, isn't it? Yeah, that's the way my sense of humor is. So you got to find laughter in dark places or you just go crazy. But my senior year was highly enjoyable to the point that when it ended, I was kind of really depressed and downtrodden. I missed it. I loved my senior year, and I was all set to go to college at Ren Lake, and I really didn't want to go there. I wanted to go to SIU and get my degree in radio and television, but my parents were dead set on me learning a trade, and I was going to be the first kid to go to college of their kids, and they were really excited. And boy, did I let them down, because I didn't go. And I never have had I've never had a college education. Do I regret that? I really don't. No, I don't at all. You know what? I honestly don't regret a lot of things. There's a couple of things maybe that didn't pan out. But as far as, I think I said it earlier. Everything that I went through has made me the person I am today. And quite frankly, you try to find the good points of yourself, and everything that I like about myself stems from my experiences. So honestly, I don't regret not having a college degree. Who do you get a college? You get a college degree so you can live more comfortably and get a good job and, have things. But you know what? Nobody seems to really enjoy what they have. Everybody's so busy trying to get more, and nobody sits back. Like, nobody stays home and watches their big screen television, and seems like everybody's on the go doing something. And I thought, does everybody just want to, this is what I've taken from working for the public. I thought, does anybody just stay home and chill out? Because my favorite thing in the whole wide world is just to be home and with my cats and having a nice quiet day and doing what I want. But it seems like people are always making themselves go do stuff, and they are so busy. Parents of kids, they seem like they're so busy anymore. Kids are in so many activities and things are going on, and are they enjoying themselves? Do they enjoy this? But is everybody doing things because they want to impress somebody else? Are they doing things for themselves? Are they doing things because their parents want them to? And are the parents wanting their kids to do it because their kids want to? Or is it because other kids? I don't know. I don't understand that line of thinking. I'm such a self-contained person. I don't do anything to impress anybody. I do a podcast, even though I got people making fun of me, because what possibly could I have to say? Being, working in that store all these years, and I really don't go anywhere. I don't socialize, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But, I find that just sad that people don't enjoy what they have, So anyway, I went off of left field here. But that is part of my 1980s experience that I really sat back and I really enjoyed the movies, and I learned to be by myself and to enjoy by myself time. I think I prepared myself for the life I'm living, being a lone wolf, so to speak. I really have never wanted what everybody else wanted in my life. And, I like it that way. But Anyway, back to the 1980s. Senior year, 1985. After I got out, I didn't go to college. I had a period of just watching TV, staying up late. Oh, I was really into Late Night with David Letterman. I'd stay up late and watch that. And got into Saturday Night Live pretty heavy and the comedy shows. Loved comedy movies. There were so many great ones at that time. And I discovered a lot of old movies during that time because I'd stay up all night because I wasn't working, much to the chagrin of my parents, I should say. But I found a lot of old movies that I really like and still watch to this day. But I finally got a job in 19. That's an in-joke. If not everybody, well, anyway. I'm not going to explain that one. That's just a joke between me, myself, and I. Sorry. I've learned to entertain myself. Don't make dirty jokes about that, by the way. This is a family podcast. Get your mind out of the gutter. Sorry. Oh, Lord. Yeah, after high school, I was kind of lost. And that seems to be a recurring theme in my life where I enjoy where I am and then I have to let it go and move on. And then you have to find something else you have to find some other facet of yourself to enjoy. And I finally got a job cleaning a restaurant uptown. Actually, I kind of fell into the job. My nephew's girlfriend's family owned the restaurant. So I'd clean that. And I was by myself for the most part, except for my nephew's girlfriend's grandpa, who I really thought he was a cool guy, Al Caesar. And Gary and Sally Caesar were my bosses. And I enjoyed my time there. And I made enough money to, get stuff. I made enough money to buy Christmas for my nephews, and I was there for, I guess 2 years. I was there for all of 2 years, and I kind of kept to myself. I kind of dropped off the face of the planet, and then for a year, after the job was over in 1988, I just kind of hid, and for all of 1989 and the first part of 1990. I had no job and I had no friends and I had nothing. So, but yet I remember the fondest part of the thing that kept me going was music and movies. And, I always found something to do, some creative way to keep myself happy. And I even started corresponding with local TV news anchors and stuff. And I had made I have one of the former news anchors at Channel 6, David Rose. I still holler at him. He's in Seattle, Washington. He does, Washington's Most Wanted, which is, the Washington area, Seattle, Washington area, version of America's Most Wanted. Remember that show? And, he's doing great and, he's married and everything. But I've kind of connected with him over the years. I corresponded with him when he was at Channel 6. He went to San Antonio, Texas. And back then, that was before the internet and stuff. So I kind of lost him for a while. And then one day he turned up on the syndicated show Extra as a reporter. And he actually did really well there for a while. And then he ended up at an Ohio station. And that's about that time is whenever the internet was popular and I had the internet and I reached out to him and we started kind of talking again. And then he left there and he ended up in Seattle, Washington, and he's on my Facebook and we still talk. So yeah, social media is something, I'm so glad we didn't have social media back in the 1980s. That's something I probably would have been dead. I probably would have been kidnapped by some weirdo because, I think about, corresponding with the news anchors and all that. I was kind of naive, and I probably would have been kidnapped and then found my body buried somewhere. I don't know. So I'm lucky the internet wasn't available then. Oh, I know I laugh at that, but it's true. We got along just fine without all that in the 1980s. I guess you don't miss what you don't have, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. Like I said, when my friend Craig moved to McLeansboro, which is, I don't know how many miles away, he might as well have moved to Australia because it was too far away to keep in contact with, other than if you wrote letters, and we didn't write letters. So, yeah. So, but I've made my friend, after Craig left, my friendship with my friend Terry grew stronger, and Rick Walker and those guys. And, Rick, if you're out there, I never hear from you. I'd like to hear from you. But Terry, we still can pick up where we left off when we see each other. And Craig's on Facebook, and like I said, we did a podcast together. So social media is great, but back then we didn't have that. And I don't know. I think it makes us appreciate social media more. I think kids are probably jaded today by the fact that they've had that all their life, and they don't know what time that they didn't have it. But for those of us, and I noticed, like, there's a lot of people my age on TikTok and on Facebook, and we're doing the fun stuff the kids are doing, and the kids kind of resent it, and we don't care. I guess we're Generation X, and we're proud of it. We had the best music, and blah 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 blah. If you talk to people that grew up in the 60s, they had the best music, and the people in the 70s they had the best music, which I agree. The music from those eras were amazing. But I have had the great fortune of being alive in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and 2000s, 2010s, and the 2020s. So I love that I've had all that experience. But I'm going to take a break, and I'll probably wrap this up because I'm starting to a lot, and like So I want to take a breath and a break, and I'll be right back to wrap up my salute to the 1980s. I'm Leonard Riggs. This is my podcast from my head to your ears. I'm Leonard Riggs, and this is my podcast from my head to your ears, and I was saluting the 80s for the last, probably talked a little too long this time. I thank you for sticking with me on this longer podcast. I had a lot of memories to go through. That was 10 years worth of the 80s, and a lot of things happened during that decade. The 90s, my life got way more interesting as far as my personal life. But the 80s, I mostly concentrated on movies and music, and I kind of kept to myself. So it was a great life lesson, the 80s were. And it was just part of what made me who I am today. And I really just look back fondly on them. I had my family, everywhere was healthy. My sister Lori, though, battled breast cancer. I can't say everybody was healthy because of that, but she did survive. It seemed like there was always a happy ending then, except for a couple of bad things that happened. I lost a cousin and things like that, which were really sad. But it's funny, though, how you look back and remember the good things, and that's a good way to be. I don't have... The 90s were way more complicated, and probably I'll never share that decade, or not much of it, because it's one that was just one big life lesson. The 90s were for me. I thoroughly enjoyed my 30s more than anything. I think my 30s were my best years of my life, but the 80s were a lot of fun, and I just have nothing but fond memories. and I can laugh about the awkward times because they really just don't matter anymore. And like I said, they were life experiences. So anyway, I would have liked to have talked more in detail about some things, and I may do another salute to the 80s. Maybe I'll do more about the movies and more about the music, whatever. I might come back to this subject because there's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot of interest in the 1980s. A lot of the kids like the 1980s. And anyway, thank you guys for listening. Sorry it took so long for me to get back to you. I kind of had a creative block again. There's not a lot going on right now. It's the winter months. Kind of had the winter blues this month, and just not filling up to podcasting. So I'll try not to do that again. I do enjoy doing my podcasts, and they're always fun to do. Still kind of working my way through programs to get to the perfect program to do my podcast. I'm trying a new one on this one. We'll see how it works, but I hope it sounds good. I'm Leonard Riggs. This is my podcast from my head to yours. Thank you for listening, and I will be not a stranger. I will podcast again very soon. Until then, thank you for listening.
Please listen.